I know I say this every time, but the worst part of being caught up with a great manga are these damn good cliffhangers every time. And then just knowing that I have to wait another month or multiple months until the next chapter comes out. It drives me crazy, man. But that's only because it's so good. It's not a complaint. It's just the inner frustration of how good Yukimura is at leading to these end of chapter cliffhangers. But we're going to talk about this chapter in order. This is Vinland Saga, chapter 211. Thank you to the translators that got this out. And yeah, let's get into it, man. So we're in a really cool position right now where we have multiple characters that are kind of separated within the storyline that we've been cutting back and forth to. And a couple of chapters ago, we were still in the middle of the raid in Arnhed village where the particular native warriors were coming to find the big knife, the sword, and cut off Ivyar's arm. And we were kind of left with a cliffhanger for that for a couple of months. Then we got to Thorfinn, who has been pelted with arrows and is being helped by Hild, and they ran into Polmuk. So we're at that cliffhanger with his storyline, and now we are cutting back to Inar, Bug Eyes, and Nisqualji. Forgive me for the pronunciations, man. You know that's not my thing. I'm sorry. But for some time, and you could even say all the way back into the farm arc, they've been building up this subtle confliction in between Einar and Thorfinn, and I love their dynamic so much because they very are like brothers. And I always say, remember the time where they agreed together that they were going to hope for this dream to build Arnhed village, to build this place away from all of the pain and chaos that they were so used to. And this is really their journey together. I know sometimes we really think about it as Thorfinn's journey because he is our main protagonist, but Thorfinn and Einar came up with this idea together, and they're both extremely skilled at different things. Whereas Thorfinn is obviously the leader of the group, Einar is the guy that taught Thorfinn everything that he knows about cultivating land and farming and actually being able to build an actual town for people to live in. So both of them are very, very important, and you need both in order to establish Arnhed village and everything that they've done with it. But both of them are in it together, and I would say they both have 50% of stakes within Arnhed village for its creation and for the entire journey to have it be created, because they started that journey out together. The only other character that was with them beginning the journey was Leif Erikson, who of course stayed behind. So these two, I know they got Gudrid and they got Hild, and more people came on board as they started the journey, but really it's those two characters that began everything way back when. So that's why I think this division and this confliction is so compelling, is because I think they both have appropriate stakes in what happens to Arnhed village. And getting ahead of myself a little bit, I like what happens here with Bug Eyes and what they've done with him in this chapter. Just before getting into the Bug Eyes Nisqualji thing, I do want to say that I really, really love that Yukimura has fleshed out and created Bug Eyes into his own standout character in the story, rather than just being a comic relief character. Now, he was never always, 100% a comic relief character, but when he was first introduced in the story, they were using him a lot for just humor and levity and silly moments and stuff like that. And he is a funny character, but I really like how he has a lot going, internally right now, especially in this chapter. I really love the moment with Nisqualji here, where, she kind of feels this guilt and that she can't go with them. And of course she can't right now, because everybody would turn on her because of what just happened in the village. And I really think a lot of Bug Eyes' character development was fleshed out when we left Leif Erikson, when he was kind of less of a counterpart to him and sort of more on his own as a character, and also with his budding relationship with Nisqualji. I know that some people don't like the idea of a relationship between them, mostly because of the age gap, and I don't know how old Bug Eyes is supposed to be, but I think, and I'm not like a history guy, so correct me if I'm wrong, but in a historical context, I don't think it was necessarily uncommon for people to be paired off or even married by the time they were in their late teens or early 20s. I don't know, exactly how much of an age gap they have. And I know that, that kind of stuff makes people fairly uncomfortable, as it should in like a modern day context. But when you're going and looking at, in history, how soon people were married off, I mean, I don't know. But I also don't sense anything remotely, manipulative or, perverse about their dynamic together. I actually find it to be genuinely wholesome. So, in the context of the story, I like their dynamic together. I like the way they interact with each other. They're both very respectful of one another, and I don't really sense anything dark or twisted about it myself. I know that some people don't like it, and that's completely fine, but in the context of the story, I don't really see anything wrong with this dynamic. And look, it's not going to go anywhere anyways because of what's happening currently in the story, so it's doomed from the very beginning. But I sense that the admiration they have for one another is genuine, and I like how it was handled, particularly in this chapter, where Bug Eyes is essentially, distracting the other Norsemen and protecting Nisqualchi so that she can get away, because he knows that if anybody sees any of the natives right now, they're going to assume malicious intent, or they're going to just immediately attack, or they're going to want to take a hostage, or like something really bad is going to happen if they see any of them. So he goes out of his way to like distract this Norseman, go back to the village, and make sure that she stays safely behind the tree. So I really, really liked that happened, and I thought it was a good moment for Bug Eyes' character, and also wondering what is going to happen with Nisqualchi at this point too. Where she's gonna, if she's gonna like kind of subtly follow, or if she's gonna go back into the forest to find the tribe, or maybe even encounter Thorfinn, Hild, and Pomuk. So I don't really know what's gonna happen with that, but I really liked how the scene was done, and I thought it was very tastefully done. I'm gonna say that. I do think it was an interesting choice also to cut to the next day, because the last time that we left Arnheid's village, it was basically under attack, and Ivyar had just lost his arm. So you were kind of wondering if they were going to attempt to finish the job, or attempt to burn down more places, or what was going to happen with that. So we go to the next day, and at least we know a couple of things. At least we know the majority of people are alive. And Gudrid is here with her baby as well, which is really nice to see. It's just good to see that Gudrid is here and the baby is safe, because for a time there, it seemed like maybe that wouldn't be the case. So, at least that part of the anxiety is now concluded, and we can move on to our next part of the anxiety of the story. What I really do like, though, is that Bug Eyes is here and talking about what Thorfinn said about retreating, and kind of like spreading that word. And there is also a theory that the historical Thorfinn that the Vinland Sagas were based on, or that Vinland Saga is based on, would actually turn out to be Bug Eyes, who, of course, is also named Thorfinn. And our Thorfinn that we've been following would die by the end of the story. Judging by where we're at this current instance, with Thorfinn pelted with multiple arrows, also having difficulty breathing and even staying conscious, and having this Thorfinn kind of like following suit of what Thorfinn wanted and what Thorfinn was saying, and relaying that message to everybody, that theory seems more and more true as the story goes on. And now we see the confliction in between the people here in the village, because people are saying, we believed in Thorfinn, guess it was all for nothing, it's not Thorfinn's fault, it was the disease's fault, and then other people saying Thorfinn is responsible, and that, anger and argumentation just keeps going back and forth and back and forth. And really, that's kind of how a lot of people feel reading the story, is what is the cause of this. And I think the point within the story is to show us that there's no one thing that caused that. Like, part of it is the disease. Part of it is the way the Lanu responded to the shaman. Part of it is Thorfinn's naivety. Part of it is a lot of these people being unprepared. Part of it is just the natural unpredictability of life. I think that when you look at a lot of situations, where conflict arises within people, it's not usually just one thing. It's because people are complex, and we have different thoughts and ideals, and one decision can alter it could, like a butterfly effect, like you make one bad decision and then it could cause a ripple effect that causes another bad thing to happen, and another bad thing to happen, and another bad thing to happen. I think the point of the story is just to tell you that life is not simple. It's very, very complex. And when you try to do things to better the world, it takes a lot of effort to do so. But in order for things to be destroyed, it takes very little, because all you need is just little pieces of everything to kind of pile up and all be in one place at the same time, and that causes chaos, And part of it is us just being human. Part of it is something that is just beyond our control, like a disease. And part of it is beliefs. Part of it is seeing the future. I guess. But no, I think that's really what the story has always been. You look at characters that are as complex as Askeladd from the very beginning. I mean, depending on who you are in the world of Vinland Saga, you could look at Askeladd as a horrendous, villainous, evil person, or you could also look at him as somebody that was done wrong and deserves more and is justified in a lot of the decisions that he makes. And so it just depends on your perspective. It depends on your belief. It depends on how you view, these characters. Some people view the Norsemen as a curse upon this land, and then other people view them as people to gain a lot of information and technology and resource from. So, all these things can be true at the same time. And then we see Ivyar again, which is really cool to see. And I was curious about what was going to happen with him. And it appears that he is all in defending Arnhed. You thought that maybe his futile attempt to fight back, maybe would humble him more. But it appears that it has given him even more incentive to try to defend the Arnhed village and fight back. Problem is, they don't have weapons, and they don't have a lot of people here that are experienced in combat whatsoever, and they're going to go up against supposedly 300 of the Lanu. Really bad idea. Yes, they have the fortress, okay, and they will have some defense for some time, but how long can they actually last? And they said they have about 100 men, including the women and children. So, how is that going to go up against an entire group of warriors coming after the village? So, yeah, not good. Then we have more of Inar here, who is bringing the Arnhed statue, the symbolic representation of the entire reason why they were here in the first place, in order to try to create something that would not lead to the devastation of what happened to Arnhed and even her husband Garter. Like, to not live in a world that would plunge people into war and slavery. And in order to defend that world, we must go to war. At least that is the way that Inar sees it. And he's not leaving. He's going to stay, and he's going to fight back. And I'm not exactly sure, like, the hierarchy of Arnhed village, but it seems like Inar probably has the most amount of clout at this point. So people are rallying behind him. Once Inar jumps on board, because people are arguing, but then once Inar jumps on board and says, slams the statue down and is like, this is the reason why we're here, we're not leaving, that's when everybody starts rallying behind him. And we see the only detractors seem to be, again, sorry, I forget this character's name, man, I'm sorry, the guy that Thorfinn saved, Cordelia, Gudrid, maybe a couple others, Bug Eyes as well, but the rest of everybody is on board. They have axes, they have tools, it looks like they have spears. So I can imagine they would be standing at the top of the fort, just trying to spear down any of the attackers, trying not to let anybody in. Obviously, the Lanu are going to have tons of arrows to fire at them that could potentially go over the gate and rain on everybody. And the one character has the sword. So it'll be curious to see when the character with the sword will show up again, because I am sure that he is going to. Yeah, chaos is going to ensue here, man. I don't know where this is going to go. I see a lot of casualties happening here. I see them getting through the gates probably fairly easily, while at the same time we have Thorfinn, who is, dude, potentially not even going to survive long enough to make it back here. So who knows what he's going to be able to do. Yeah, I mean, you might have Polmuk kind of stepping up the plate, Polmuk and Hild kind of taking up the mantle of Thorfinn if he doesn't make it, but, that's still not going to be enough. I think ultimately they will be forced into a retreat, but it's just going to be a matter of what characters will be left when all is said and done, and if Thorfinn and Hild can even get back in time. Imagine if Thorfinn and Hild were left behind, what would happen to that if they actually did wind up retreating, but they were stuck here? And who knows if either of those two characters are going to make it out by the end of the series, and it's likely they won't. Inar at this point, I feel like could go either way. I think Inar is about 50-50. It's sad to say, like, I love Thorfinn, but the more I read this, the more I don't think that Thorfinn is going to make it to the end of the series. I just I just have a hunch. How and why it'll happen, I don't know. But just the more I read, the more chapters come out, the less I think Thorfinn's going to make it to the end. I'm sorry. I just get that feeling, man. It's just that sinking feeling in my chest. Ultimately, I really enjoyed this chapter. I'm super stoked to see what happens next. It's going to be at least another month before the next chapter, so looks like we're going to be getting the war between the Norse and the natives over the course of this summer, and I'm here for it, man. I love this series, so I can't wait to see more. Let me know what you guys thought about the chapter down below. Leave all your thoughts, comments, opinions on it. Let me know what you think. As always, guys, thanks for watching this review. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and comment to help it out in the algorithm. If you want to support the channel on a deeper level, in the links below, I have Patreon, channel memberships, merch store, as well as all the social media links where you can follow me. I'm most active on Twitter, also Instagram if you want to see pictures of my cat. Other than that, guys, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later.